Welcome to Beyond the Business Card.
I said, I didn't approach you, you've approached me, and you invited me to lunch. So I said, why don't we order, and you have an hour to tell me why I should allow you to invest in my company.
Today, we're sitting down with Erika Doyle, founder and CEO of DrinkDry, the region's premium non-alcoholic drinks marketplace. Erika's entrepreneurial journey started long before DrinkDry. At 16, she left Lithuania and moved to the UK alone, driven by a story she read in a newspaper and a determination to carve out her own path. She built her life there, putting herself through school and university, starting her career and navigating the challenges of being in a new country on her own. Around 6 years ago, she moved to Dubai with her family and saw a gap in the market. DrinkDry was born. This is a story about risk, resilience, and building something from the ground up. Erika, delighted to have you in the studio with us today.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So what we do in this podcast, as I explained before, is we talk about life beyond the business card, okay? So I want to know the journey about an entrepreneur. I want the good, the bad, the ugly, where things started, and what led you to set your business up, and what led you to Dubai as well. So we're going to unpick it all. But I think we should start with, if you could just tell us a bit about where do you come from, Erika?
So I'm from Lithuania originally. I moved to the UK when I was 16 years old, and there's a whole story behind that too. And then, I spent my formative adult years in the UK. So education, university, first job, met my husband, had my first 2 kids. So really, in terms of home is always where the heart is. So when people say where you're from, I always say Lithuania, because that's where I'm from. That's where my parents live. But UK is also home because I grew up as an adult there, and the culture, the influences there I think it had an impact on me as an adult. And then I moved to Dubai about 6 years ago with my family.
Okay, so there's a few things we're going to unpick there, right? You just press the fast forward button.
Yeah, I know. You're like, okay, I'm ready. Ask the questions.
Okay, so you said there was a little story as to why you moved to the UK. Are you able to share on that?
Look, I think it's really interesting. When I was growing up, I never thought I was like any different, or that I was a difficult child, or just different even, And I think only since I had my own kids and I heard my mom multiple times, particularly about my middle daughter, she's different. I mean, she's a handful. She's phenomenal. I mean, she's a phenomenally bright, incredible little human being. But she has this innate thing that she lives by, and I don't think she even knows it. You know the saying, if the answer is no, you are either asking the wrong question or you're asking the wrong person. Well, this is my middle kid. Like, she does not take no for an answer. It doesn't exist in her universe. Like, she can't even comprehend it. And I've heard my mom, many times compare me to her. And she would kind of, when I'm in a situation with my middle one where she's really challenging me, my mom would say, payback time, and kind of like, walk past like really smugly. And there was a time when I said, like, why do you always say that? Like, I was such a good kid, and her eyes just were like this. She was like, what on earth are you talking about? And then she kind of, she explained the story I'm about to tell you from her perspective, which made me realize maybe it wasn't quite ordinary. Maybe it wasn't a normal thing to do, So in 2004, Lithuania joined the European Union, and that was a big deal for us. I was born in 1988, only a few years before the independence. And I was fortunate to grow up in an independent Lithuania, but there was a real kind of feeling that we strive for freedom, that we want to be part of the West. We want to be able to free and want to travel. We want all the opportunities that the world has to offer us. So when the referendum happened in 2003 and we joined in 2004, I just came home one day and I said to my parents, and at that point I'm 15, just turned 15. And I said, I'm going to England next summer. And they're like, right. Like, and my parents are pretty normal family. My dad always had a really kind of like working class background, had 2 jobs more often than not. So me and my sister could go to a great school, do tennis, kind of like all the good things. And so we didn't travel as a family. Like, I've never been on a plane. We'd go to a Lithuanian seaside for a holiday or somebody's summer house. So it wasn't, and I came home and I said, well, I'm going to go to England when I was 15, still 15, next year when we join European Union. And they kind of casually laugh it off and whatever. And came May 2004, we joined the European Union. And I went to England in June 2004 as a 15-year-old to do whatever. You know, I was prepared to clean toilets. I was prepared to wait the tables. I was prepared to do anything. It didn't matter because I just wanted to go.
So was this just for like a summer job?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. And I'm very persuasive.
Yeah.
So I think I managed to persuade my dad to buy me a plane ticket. Never been on the plane before. My parents never been on the plane before. We didn't even have a suitcase. We had bags, you know, one of those like big kind of sports bags.
Yeah.
So I went to England as a 15-year-old for the summer. And luckily I went with a friend who was as crazy as me, I think. And we did odd jobs and we just had an amazing time. Now imagine how difficult it is. You have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult it would be that your 15-year-old daughter is telling you, and you've never been to this country, you've never traveled, that they're announcing to you that you are going, like that they are going. They are going for the summer. They somehow found a place to live from somebody they know that you don't even know. So that was like, you know, when my mum explained it from her perspective, I'm like, yeah, that probably isn't quite usual or the normal way. And we're really normal family. Like, you know, my sister did all the right things. She still lives 15 minutes away from her mum. She speaks to my mum every single day on the phone. So we're not like alternative or hipster or like, we're not that kind of family who would do that. And then I came back after summer. You know, we'll leave the things that kind of happened and didn't happen. And then I think it was a few months later, I was at school and one of our teachers, it was a maths lesson, and our teacher had a newspaper on the table. And I finished my work and I just said, do you mind if I take the newspaper? So while everybody else was finishing their work, and I was always a straight A student kind of, so I picked up a newspaper and I was flicking through it. And there was a little article, and I still have the clipping of it, about a Lithuanian girl who moved to the UK in 2002, probably before we joined the European Union. And she did her A-levels there, had no idea what A-levels are. Fine, whatever that is. And at that point, in 2004, October, as I read the article, she was studying at Cambridge University. And she mentioned that, you know, she lived in south of Birmingham. So I like noted all these things down, like A-levels, south of Birmingham, like whatever these things are. And she kind of like, she said this story, and the whole article was meant to inspire, I suppose, young people to be like, look, you know, you can now go and study abroad and you can do all these things. So I asked the teacher if I can then borrow the newspaper, and I went home and I just, you know, presented the newspaper and I said, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to move to England next year. Like, I'm going to leave school at 16. And I was in like the top school in my town, a top student, you know, high expectations from the school. And I was going to leave and I was going to go and do these A-level things. I don't know what they were. You know, and again, like, I don't know if I was a parent, what I would say or think or do. But, you know, my mum is incredible. So you know what she did? Instead of saying, don't be crazy, like, they never dampened my dreams. There was never like, you can't do it. My mum called the newspaper, spoke to the, I don't know, whatever was the number on the newspaper, asked for the journalist details. And at this point, I don't think my parents have a mobile phone in Lithuania. Like, it's all done on the landline, okay? And then she spoke to the journalist and asked if she could get the girl's contact number, the one that the article was about. So the journalist eventually called, and I don't know if she's doing any of this at that point.
Right.
So eventually, my mum comes to me and she gives me a piece of paper with the girl's name and her phone number. And she says, here's the girl's phone number, call her. And like, so if you're going to England, you might as well actually know what you're doing. Yeah. And it was just incredible because she was from my town. She was back for Christmas from Cambridge, wherever she was going. She met with me. She told me the story. She explained to me what A-levels are. She explained to me everything. I noted down the sixth form college that she went to and I was like, I'm going to go there. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. I sent them an email from my Yahoo account. And I said, you know, my name is so-and-so. This is what I do. And I want to come and do A-levels at your, you know, at your sixth form starting September. So I never, like, only until a few years ago, I never thought there's anything like interesting about that. I thought that's just normal. That's what people do. If they want something, they go for it. They just go and get it. Like, if I want this job or if I want to move to a country, if I want to meet, I don't know, Barack Obama, if that was my, like, if I genuinely wanted to meet him, I would make it my purpose in life to meet him. And I would meet him. Maybe not in the next 6 months, but at some point, I would be sitting down and having a coffee with him. So I moved to the UK when I was 16, just like that, to do A-levels.
You didn't move to South Birmingham, did you?
I did.
Oh, wow.
I did. I moved to Solihull, which is a really nice part of Birmingham.
My wife's from Coventry. I know.
Okay, so I moved to Solihull, and I remember sitting in history lesson as my first lesson. And I moved. So I arrived in Birmingham, and I went to stay in Handsworth for the first week or so. And I don't know if you've ever been there.
No.
It's the most dangerous place in Britain. On the day that I was going to do my induction day at sixth form, which probably took me an hour and a half on the bus to get to Solihull, there was somebody shot. Literally shot outside the door.
Yeah.
My parents don't know any of this. Like, I never bothered telling them.
Yeah.
So when I went to my induction at the sixth form and I wrote down my address on some form, there was like all the social workers, the teachers, everybody was like, so where do you live? I was like, oh, I'm staying at a friend's, she lives there. And they're like, no, no, you're not staying there. So they helped me find a host family in Solihull. So I moved pretty quickly. But, I moved there as a 16-year-old and just immersed. And I was in a history lesson, like say about Birmingham, never like apart from the 2 months in London the previous summer.
Yeah.
My English was pretty good. I was at 100% every exam in English in Lithuania. And I remember sitting in this double lesson in history and understanding zero. Because everybody's speaking with this accent. and I literally, I remember thinking, what is this? And I just came up to the teacher afterwards and I said, I have no idea what's going on. Is there anything I have to do? And, for a little while, people spoke to me like really like pronouncing their words and looking me in the eye. So I could almost like lip read, but it took me a little while to crack that accent. Yeah.
So what was it like moving? I mean, as a Lithuanian into Birmingham, was it tough? Were you welcome? Was there? Did you face any animosity?
Totally.
Okay,
so, no, totally. Good. Like I was, we were sort of like. So it was me and my friend. The two of us. I convinced my friend from school. I don't know how we convinced her parents.
Well, you seem to convince.
Yeah,
there's a bit of a trait here. I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm very persuasive. So it was the two of us. So it was easier, like there's always two of us, and that was definitely something that helped me navigate the whole thing.
Gotcha.
But no, I mean, it's a pretty nice part of Birmingham. Yeah. There was a lot of different nationalities there, but people who were originally born in Britain, but their cultural heritage is probably from Sri Lanka, Pakistan, India, wherever they come from, Africa. So it was pretty diverse, but pretty white, for the UK. And we were the only Eastern Europeans. So we were quite everybody knew us. We were quite exotic to them, and I had a pretty Eastern European sense of fashion. Right. I mean, like a really bright pink puffer jacket, bleached blonde, long hair. We attracted a lot of attention, but they were phenomenal. Like the college looked after us. The teachers really looked after us. People really looked after us, parents of other classmates, they invited us for Christmas because we probably couldn't afford to go back for Christmas the first year. So we spent Christmas at somebody's really lovely home that they invited us. I've always, throughout my life, I feel like I've always experienced people kindness. Wherever I went, people have always been incredibly kind to me. Or maybe that's just what I choose to remember. Yeah. But I've always attracted really kind people.
Good.
Always.
Good. So I grew up, I spent most of my life, so I was born in Los Angeles. But I only spent 6 months there, but my mother decided in all her wisdom that...
Were they both British?
Both British, but they decided to get me an American passport, and I left with a US passport, which to this day is still kind of annoying thing to have.
Oh, I bet. Living here.
So grew up, so born there, then went to the UK, then moved to the south of Spain, and then ended up back in the UK. But I went to like 7 schools by the time I was 13, which was nuts.
Yeah.
So I've always, and I think because in my passport it says Los Angeles, I've always been quite a traveler. I've always wanted to sort of get up and go somewhere else. So that's why even now I've lived in Asia, Latin America, Middle East, Europe. So but you had this like being pulled towards the UK. What I don't know. Do you think it's still got that pull?
I don't think it has the pull now, but I think, I was very, like I mentioned, I was very studious. So Oxford and Cambridge, I mean, the Ivy League and the Oxbridge were the goal, the dream.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go to Ivy League because I couldn't afford it and it was too far away from home. So therefore, UK English speaking, like it seemed a little bit more achievable. I eventually didn't go to Oxbridge because they didn't offer the course that I wanted to do, but I went to Nottingham University. So I think it was language, accessibility, somewhat familiarity. I think the UK was kind of known, and British people are seen to be polite and nice, and welcoming. And my parents probably wouldn't have wanted me to move to Amsterdam because they would have thought there's a lot of other things going on there. I don't know. It was just probably familiarity and the language, and it just seemed like the easy place to go. And then I just stayed. I had really good 2 years in the UK doing my A-levels, had phenomenal 3 years at university at Nottingham. And then, when I was leaving, I think my mum, I feel like, I need to ask her this question, but I feel like maybe when she was growing up, she had these dreams that she never told about, like that she wanted to travel, she wanted to do these things. So when I was saying, well, I'm doing this, she channeled her inner self through me. And I need to ask her that question, why she was always so like, go do it. My dad didn't quite take it so well. I think for a little while, like particularly when I was moving to the UK, he took it personally as if something was wrong at home, that I was leaving home. And it took him a little while to realize that I wasn't leaving home. Like I was, home is always home. Like to this day, I go back and the place I feel the best is on my parents' sofa when my parents are giving me food and looking after me, But my dad took it very personally, that he'd done everything he could, to give the best life that he could to me and my sister, and I chose to leave. So he took it a bit more personally. And the one thing that I think in the last moment before I was leaving, that kind of we made up, and then he went, okay, I'll support. Both my parents are quite patriotic, and I promised him that after I finish my education, higher education, or if I was doing master or whatever, when I'm done with education in the UK, that I will come back and I will work for Lithuania. That I kind of pitched it to him like, I'm going to get the skills that I cannot get here, and I will bring it home. Like I'm going to be this really
for the good
person.
Of the country.
Yes. And my dad kind of like bought into it. Like he liked that. So again, I'm quite persuasive. I remember in the last year of being at uni, my dad kept saying, he's like, so what's the plan? Like, are you going to go for like, who are you applying to? Like, are you going to go in public service? Like, you're not a doctor, so you're not going to go and work for NHS. Like, what's the plan? How are you coming back to Lithuania? Because, time's ticking, like you've got a year. And I think he sort of said, he mentioned diplomatic service. And I was like, oh, that's my way out. Like I technically wouldn't be breaching the agreement with him. So that's why I'm very persuasive. I managed to get a job at the Lithuanian embassy in London because I was technically employed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Lithuania. So like I was working on my Lithuanian national insurance number. Like I was paying my taxes to Lithuania. And then my dad kind of was like, oh, that's quite cool. Like you work for the Lithuanian embassy in London. Yeah, you do work for Lithuania, for the better good of the country. So I managed to like then stay in London. And I think over time, like my dad sort of let it go eventually.
Got you. And you did it. You worked for the Lithuanian embassy in London.
I did.
You held your part of the bargain.
I feel like I always, that there's always a way there's always a way to find a solution, like whether it's a problem or just a solution. It might not be exactly how you want it. I had to intern there for probably best part of 7 months, meaning, I had to find a place to live. And luckily some of my friends from university offered like their parents home, they kind of let me stay on their couch for 6 months. I had to work as a waitress in the evenings to be able to afford the tube fares. And I interned at the embassy for about 7 months and I worked so hard to make sure that when the position comes in anything, in the consular section, like whatever is the job that I can do, that I'm the first choice. Of course, you have to go through the process of applying. It's a government institution, but I wanted to make sure that I'm unbeaten, So it wasn't ideal. Like I didn't just go, I want a job at the Lithuanian embassy, and I got it.
Yeah.
It took me, I had to find a way to get into it. Yeah. But once you get hold of something, right, that's it. If you just don't let go and you keep on holding on, you keep on climbing up, and like bit by bit by bit, you know, there was a point where even like parents were like, oh, like you went to university and you're working as a waitress now, like we're not entirely comfortable with this setup. How long are you going to continue to intern? Like what's the end goal? I said, I don't know, but that's what I'm doing right now. And every single day I turn up, I do the best job that I can. I make sure that, you know, out of 17 people at the embassy, from the ambassador to economic attaché to cultural to the cleaner to the everybody knew me.
Okay.
Everybody knew me and everybody liked me because I did things for everyone, you know? And that was it. And then when the position came, it was kind of...
Which, you know, you've got tremendous sales tactics. We call it persuasion tactics, but I mean, you know what you're doing, yeah? If everyone's on your side, the reality is when the job comes up, you know that you've got everyone who's going to put the hand and endorse you, right? Yeah. So it's a tactic and it works very well. And, and it served you
Tried and tested.
It's so far part of your story, it served you very, very well. Okay, so things went well at the embassy, right?
I did, yeah.
Excellent.
And I was going the whole length, and I applied to go through, so I was locally engaged staff, and I applied to do my diplomatic exams, and I, you know, that was kind of like, that's what I was going to do. I was going to serve my country, you know. My mom is a psychiatrist, so she works for NHS, so my sister does the same. I was always told it's good to serve people in what you do, you know, whether you're in politics or in NHS or you're a teacher, you're serving people, right? So it's a good thing to do. I never had any thoughts, not a second of ever wanting to have my own business. Really? I was not surrounded by people who had their own businesses, maybe like one odd uncle in the family, but it wasn't a norm in my kind of circle growing up. So I was always quite happy to serve, you know, go and do good and have a job that is meaningful and kind of long term. So going into diplomatic service felt like the right thing to do and a really noble thing to do, you know. So I was going to do that, and I applied for my exams, and I was set to take my exams in July 2012, and then I met my husband in May 2012, and that was the end of that.
Yeah. He's got lots of answers for then, is he?
That's it. That's it. And that, I think that was, you know, when you look back at your life, there are some really, obviously every single day is that sliding door moment, right? Every single day. Yeah. But I think there are some pivotal moments in your life where you look back and you think, had that not happened, that really wouldn't have happened. Like that just changed. Like, so I think moving to the UK at 16, meeting my husband and moving to Dubai were the three really, really drastic things that took my life in a direction that it did, opposed to the other way around.
Well, it all leans back from you making that decision to go to the UK, really. That's, you know, one fault after the other.
Yeah.
My decision to end up here in Dubai is all I can all put back to. I decided to quit my job in advertising after 7 years and moved.
Where were you based in London?
I was based in London, and being completely honest with you, it's quite a hedonistic lifestyle in working in advertising as a 20-year-old guy in London in the early 2000s. I was out a lot, right?
Yeah,
it was pretty wild. I'm not going to.
You did have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's watching this and knew me, then they know it was a good time, right? Let's just leave it at that. Anyway, I decided after one of those good times, that I was sick of feeling like this. I actually looked at people in the advertising industry that were up like 10 years older than me. I didn't want to be any of them, and I thought, right, I'm quitting now. And I made a decision to move to Central America. I resigned and then moved to Honduras. Now, I've told the story a few times. Yeah, people think I was completely nuts, but actually that decision was exactly the same as your decision to move to UK was my decision to move to Honduras, was that because I moved there on my own. And it was the most dangerous country, like second most dangerous country in the world. Gun put to my head, all that sort of wild stuff.
I think Ecuador now took the lead in the last few years, but it was Honduras for a very long time.
And but then when I got the call to get a job in Dubai, of course, I thought, well, I lived in Honduras. What can Dubai is going to be a piece of cake, right? So I didn't even think about it. So
Did you even know where Dubai was on the map? Like, were you like, nah?
Oh yeah, I did, because I knew a couple of people here. Never been here before in my life though. But it was better than the UK where I was at the time. I was part of an exit for a business. The recession had happened. I thought, well, it can't be more difficult than that, So I was off. But I can, my bravery for going and making that decision gave me the bravery to go and make a lot.
But did you feel like you were brave at that moment in time?
No, I've never. I mean, if you ask, no, you never do, and I'm sure you don't.
No, you just do it.
People think you're wild, you're crazy for making decisions that you do, but you can't trust yourself as well.
Yeah. It's only hindsight that you can look back and you think you're brave. And age, as you're getting older, and you see maybe like your nieces or people kind of that you love and you want to protect going through the similar thing, and you think, how did I do this at that age? Or but I don't think anybody ever feels like you're doing something extraordinary in that moment.
There's my grandparents used to say this to me, saying, let your future self, your future self will thank you for the decisions that you make, right? And it's so true. And I've always had those sort of words, and I hear it a lot now from other mentors that I follow, etc. And it's so true. Like, I'm very proud of that person that made that decision, because my life has changed as a result of it, as you must be as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So you met your husband.
I did.
And what happens then? Come on.
So, it's kind of like, there's a couple of things. I do think that as humans, we have this really cool ability to reinvent ourselves a lot. I was just messaging a friend today, and she said something like, nothing should hold you back, or something about what I'm wanting. And I said, I still want to be a president of a country one day. And like, that might happen, So I think at the point where I was living in London, had this amazing job. I was working really hard. I was going out a lot. I had a really great social life. And I was only 23. My husband is older than me. And I was only 23, but I felt like I lived a lot. Like, I left home when I was 16. I've always had, even through A-levels, I had 2 jobs. I had a weekend job in a super premium fashion clothes brand. And I had an evening job at DJ Fridays. Like, I've always had, I don't know when I slept.
Quite a contrast.
Like, I don't know how I slept.
Yeah.
But at A-levels, I was working full-time hours while I was doing A-levels. Like, the same at university. I always had to work. And my parents supported the best that they could. But by the time I was 23, I felt like I'm kind of like, I'm done. And London just got to me. It was getting to me. It didn't get to me, but it was getting to me. Like, I was going to work, everything, things were getting a bit the same. And, and that's why I applied for the diplomatic service. That was part of like, let's do something else. And then I met my husband, and I fell madly in love with him. And within 6 months, I think he proposed. And then my whole kind of focus from, because he's older than me, I then had to change my priorities in life. Instead of going after a career or going after what the future self career-wise would be proud of me, to, if I want a family, it's now. Like, I cannot wait till I'm 35. He's 24 years older than me. Right. So by the time I'm 35, he's 60. He's not going to want to start a family then. So I had to completely change my life plans in terms of what I want to do and the priority, the order of the things I wanted to do. And then, once I did that, my focus was to get married, to set up a home, and to have babies, as many as I could. So I left my job, and we lived together in West Sussex, and I loved that part of my life. When I look back, I was probably too young to be so like homely, and I got pregnant and I had a baby, and then I had another baby, and I was covered in nappies and like leggings and big baggy t-shirts, and I loved it. Probably too young to do that, but it just suited me perfectly at that moment in time.
But it wasn't too young.
I suppose I was. I'm comparing it probably with society now, and like when people have families and stuff. So there was a good 4 or 5 years of where I stepped away from any professional, pursuing anything professionally. I just stepped back, focused on the family, and my husband at that point, we actually had a deal. So, and I think that's really important to mention. When I left my job, and he already had his business, they were pretty successful, they were doing well. And we made a deal. And I said, look, and he had a 10-year-old son who lived with us, right? And he was a great dad. And he had a lot of different things. He had his 8-year-old mom who lived nearby, a lot of kind of life responsibilities. And I said to him, let's make a deal for the next 5, I think it was originally 3, and then we sent it to 5. For the next 5 years, you are off the hook with everything, like everything. You don't have to worry about finances or childcare or like your mom or like anything at all, bills, admin, nothing. Everything I will do. You just focus on growing your business and being the most amazing professional self. And he did that. I mean, boy, did he take that seriously. And that's what kind of led us to Dubai then, 6 years later. But, I went to all the parent meetings with his son. Like, I was the one who sat down with him and chose his GCSEs and A-levels, and the one who tutored him through it all. Not that I had any idea what I was doing. I was the one who was taking his 8-year-old mother and his disabled sister out twice a week. I was the one who, we built a house like from scratch, a huge house in the like national park protected area. I did that. Like, I project managed it. We changed bank in 2017 because of that reason. We were building a house and the bank we were with wouldn't lend us the money. So we went to HSBC. And probably 3-4 years later, my husband very genuinely turned around to me and said, oh, is there a Barclays in our local town? I need to go and get something. And I was like, what do you need to go to Barclays for? And he said, I need to get this address, letter. I was like, dude, we haven't been with that bank for 4 years. And he's like, really? And then he kind of looked at his like wallet. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, how long have we been with HSBC? Like, so we did that really intentionally where, I took it on, and it was almost like a full-time job, managing everything, like managing our life and everything. Again, I'm very persuasive. So that was, there's part of me, I could sit here and say, I took time out and I had 2 kids and I was a stay-at-home mum. That would be true.
Yeah.
But the other side of it was there's a lot of things I did in that time, like financially, we built this incredible house. Yeah. We created incredible equity. So like financially, I contributed a lot to my family's well-being and, financial security. I took my stepson through years of 10 to 18, really being there for him and have a great relationship with him. I had 2 babies. My mother-in-law is still alive. She's 92 and she just spent 6 weeks with us here. So I'm super close to her. Yeah. So I did a lot of things that mattered and had an impact apart from just kind of being a stay-at-home mom. And then, by the time the opportunity to move to Dubai came, I was so happy in the life that I had. And if I had to put money on, would I have gone back to trying any sort of professional career, I'm not sure I would have done. Maybe I would have done some property development, kind of like odd projects more than anything. But I'm not entirely sure that I would have had the guts to do it back in the UK. I think the whole entrepreneurial environment is very different. I don't feel, and I love the UK. I love, it's my second home. Yeah. I don't feel that people around you are as supportive as here. I could be sitting here in a room with 5 people I don't know and telling you about my journey, and you'll be going, good for you. Yeah. I'm so what a great person. And I don't feel there's the same vibe in the UK.
It's a sad trait in the UK that we love to build people up and knock them down, or just or feel very envious and jealous about people's success, or feel that they're bragging when they talk about things that are going well. Yeah, I mean, I've had struggles with that for years as well. But when I moved from UK to Dubai, everyone thought I was completely nuts because 17 years ago. But I would always get asked, Is it safe there?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So safe.
Is it safe? They would ask me, and then they thought, isn't it broke because of all the cars getting dumped? And then, but it's so fake. That's the always one you get. And also, I'd always get asked, and I'm sure you get asked this, probably less so now. But whenever I go back, so when are you coming back then? Yeah. And I'd end up sort of telling the same story over and over again. Funny enough, no one asks me that now.
No one asks us that now too. Yeah. I think we've made it so clear that we're just not. We bought a house here 3 years ago. So, that was like, yeah, we're done. Like, you're not coming back. So, I think if I'd stayed in the UK, I don't know if financially we were very happy, so I didn't have to work.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have tried to do anything. And I'm not even talking about starting a business. I would have probably thought a professional kind of like getting another job and moving my way up the ladder. I don't think I would have done that.
Gotcha.
So moving to Dubai was very critical.
And your husband's work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we kind of moved here because, I think I did great in terms of our deal that we had. I would look back on those 5 years and go, yeah, I'm pretty happy with her performance. Like, she held her end of the bargain, but my husband did phenomenally well.
Right.
He built his business. I mean, he grew it like as if it was on steroids.
Yeah.
And it just shows you, and I always think of that, the mental load of life that we all have, right? It's so important.
Mm.
And when you take all of that away from him, and if you ask him that question now about what contributed to your success, I know, and he's done it and I've heard it. So he would say, Erika support. Yeah. This was the number one thing. Yes, maybe there were some opportunities that came his way that were fortunate.
Yeah.
But having that support at home and somebody just taking everything off your plate, that you're driving home and all you're thinking about work, like in a creative way, not in a pressure way, but you're always thinking of what to do, how to do it. You're not thinking about, I need to make sure I call the dentist you're not having to do any of that. And I think that had a really, really big impact on what he achieved in that time.
As a team.
As a team.
Yeah,
as a team.
Yeah.
As a team.
So, okay, you're here. What made you start a business? Come
on. No idea. No idea. Look, genuinely, and I say this very humbly, I had no idea where this was going to go. We moved here in 2019, and by that point, both of us are non-drinkers. So when we wanted to have a family, we ran into some fertility difficulties.
Yeah.
And one of the things after multiple tests, and it was kind of, we weren't getting anywhere, and our GP, a 75-year-old kind of GP with very strong opinions, just said to me one day, he's like, sweetie, just change your lifestyle. You are 20-something years old. He's like, how many times do you exercise? What do you eat? How much do you drink? How many times a week do you smoke? All of those questions where I would have said normal, like, I'll have a cigarette on a Friday night. I'll have wine most days, or, I'll exercise very little, because at 20-year-old, you don't need to exercise. You look great as it is, right? And you don't think of health benefits of that. So he kind of made me question my lifestyle. And so we wanted to have a baby. So we both really changed our lifestyle, and we gave up alcohol. And then we had one baby, then we had another one, and we just never went back to it. So by the time we moved to Dubai, I was probably a non-drinker for a good 5 years,
right.
4 years maybe.
Yeah.
And the whole non-alcoholic drinks category then, what you would have seen or trend, was much more dominant than it was here. Here it was completely insane. Like, what? Non-alcoholic? What?
You could get like a Heineken.
You couldn't in 2019. No, they didn't launch, and they did not launch until March 2021.
Could you get? I only say this because my father-in-law, bless him, I can't remember what it was, but he didn't know that you couldn't buy alcohol at the supermarket here.
Yep.
When he came to see us in like 2016 or something. So he bought me what he thought was a pack of beers.
So you could get strawberry flavor barbecue.
It must have been that. Yeah,
it
was horrendous.
Yeah. Absolutely. So by the time, 2019, I do the same thing, and by that point, I love socializing. We have a great life. And I have these options that are available in the UK. In my local pub, I can have a really good non-alcoholic gin and tonic. Yeah. My husband can have a really good craft non-alcoholic beer. So we didn't feel a struggle to not drink at all. And you get some odd questions about why you're not drinking. But as a whole, it was a lot more socially acceptable, I felt. And then when we moved here, the same thing. I go into the supermarket and I'm walking the aisles. I remember walking in Carrefour and Arabian Ranches on my first trip there as we moved there. I even went to like a cleaning detergent aisle. I was like, where on earth are they keeping this stuff? Like, but nothing was there. So I whinged and I moaned for about 6 months. And then my husband eventually said, well, do something about it. You know, he's like, enough, like do something about it. And I did. And it was one of those where it was driven from, and it was never meant to be like a business where I was going to hire people and have managing directors and have investors and board meetings. And, you know, sometimes going to these things, I'm like, how did I end up here? Like this was supposed to be just me, maybe an admin person, and like we ship something out of my garage, you know? And that was it. And I started with the idea of, I mean, oh my gosh, the name, oh my gosh. Thank goodness
It's a great name.
Thank you. But the original idea that I had was not a good name. And thank goodness to whoever was the person or the people who were like, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Sober binge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly the reaction. Oh, wow. So drink dry is much better. So we didn't do anything with sober binge. It was very short-lived. But the idea was that, you know, I'm going to bring in some of my favorite drinks and I'm going to set up a little website. Surely it can't be difficult. Just a little website. I mean, so naive. I'm going to set up this little website and people are just going to buy it. And that's going to be fantastic. And it's going to be really great. And I'll have something to drink and enjoy. And I'll do something good. I'm serving people again, you know. And then it just kind of escalated. The initial business idea was that I was going to pair up the brands that I knew with existing FMCG, FMB distributors here. Because I knew them through my husband's contacts. I knew the owners of pretty much everyone. So that was going pretty well in 2019. I was just being a good Samaritan, making all these introductions, and people are flying into Dubai, and I was like getting people together and be like, you should work with this brand and you should import them and you should supply the hotels, the restaurants, the supermarkets, and I will just buy for my little tiny e-commerce, you know, and I'll just sell it. That's it. And that was going pretty well. There were some good synergies and some brands were really finding good connections with distributors. Gulf Food 2020, like people were about to sign contracts, like we're definitely on track. And then COVID hit. And all the distributors were like, pull the plug. They're like, we're not taking any new brands, any new products. We have millions and millions stuck in the market. You know, people can't pay us. We've got product that is expiring in our warehouse. Not the time. And it wasn't a commodity. Like it was something that was pretty hard work to sell. Like it wasn't an easy sell, you know? And that's when I think we talked about this prior to the podcast, having a spouse who is just completely, unquestionably on your side. Again, critical, you know? And he said to me, he's like, you can do that yourself. He's like, you don't need anyone. You don't need those guys. We'll fund it to start with, you know? So you take on exclusively all of these brands for the region because it's COVID. So everybody's kind of stuck going, the world is never coming back to normal. We're never going to be exporting out. Like, that's it. You know, this is never going to happen. So he's like, this is the key moment to go to the brands and be like, it's okay. I'm here to save everything. So you just sign this contract. And I remember I spent 25,000 dirhams on these like insane contracts with like this top law firm in Dubai. And I was thinking, what am I doing? Like, what have I done? I've spent 25,000 dirhams, but it's the best money I've ever spent because I had these awesome contracts that were fair, you know, but they gave me a lot of power in terms of like taking these brands on when nobody wanted them. Yeah. So everybody was like, you want us exclusively? Oh my gosh, this is amazing, you know? So it was like, it just worked. So I signed these amazing contracts with some of the world's biggest wine producers who are making non-alc for their non-alc portfolio. I signed some amazing, you know, non-alcoholic beers that are bestsellers, and it's an exclusive beer at Royal Atlantis. You know, I signed these amazing brands exclusively to me, and they had zero expectation in what I was going to do because it was COVID. So whatever I was going to do was going to be amazing for them. So we then launched that e-commerce, and that was going pretty well. And then some retailers started approaching us. So we launched some brands in the retail space. And then, you know, I mean, I'm kind of like talking the broad top level part here, you know. There's more to a retailer approaching you and getting a product in there. But, you know, and then we started supplying hospitality. And then, I got pregnant with my third child at that moment. So that wasn't ideal. but I then hired one person, and then I hired another person, and then I hired another person, and then and then we, another year in, we moved out of my home office into a proper office. And then I was approached by a private family office in the IFC. They wanted to invest, and that's it. And then it kind of just went from there. And I felt like every day for a little while, like my husband would jokingly say, you put your big girl pants on and off you go, And there was a lot of fake it till you make it. Like going into a retailer meeting, I literally had no idea what RSP is. I'm like sitting there going, you want, yeah, I'll get that to you.
Google.
Absolutely. I mean, and this is a true story. And I don't know how my husband ever allowed me to invest our family savings into. So I bring in the product, 2 products in a container. I spend about 25,000 euros to bring in this product. I've set up the company. I paid these lawyers. I'm already like a couple of 100,000 dirhams in, like good couple of 100,000 dirhams in. And the product is landed, like it's in the warehouse. I'm about to launch my website. And then a friend of mine introduces me to Boca in the IFC and goes, you should speak to them. They'll definitely take something. They're amazing. They're always looking for new products. So off I go with my little trolley and some samples, and I meet the guys there, and they're epic. They're like, yeah, we love this. We love your sparkling wine. We're non-alcoholic. We love your non-alcoholic beer. We'll take some. Send us the pricing. Like, we're done. I come home and I'm buzzing. I'm like, these guys are going to take 10 cases of non-alcoholic beer. And my husband has an alcohol distribution company. So like trading. So he goes, so what margin you working on? And I was like, what's margin? And he's like, very funny. I'm like, no, seriously, what's margin? And he was like, oh my God. He's like, you have no idea what margin is? I'm like, no. He's like, so, okay. He's like, how are you going to come up with the price? I was like, I haven't figured that. Like, I hadn't got to that point. Like, I was going to figure it out as I sit down to maybe do it. So I literally had to Google what is margin, and then I had to Google what is kind of industry standard margin for a distributor in F&B. I had to do a bit of to come up with what margin I wanted to have. I had no cost as far as I was concerned because I was not paying myself. I didn't have an office to pay for. Like as far as I was concerned, I had no cost, so I could sell it even like whatever as long as the product is moving. So there was a lot of learning, like really, really deep learning that I had to do and still do, but in the early days, oh boy.
Well, so you came up with the idea, and then how did you just start calling up these brands?
Yeah.
Then?
Yeah.
And then no one had ever approached them before in the Middle East?
No.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So I knew this guy in Belgium. So this is a true story. I knew this guy in Belgium I knew that he knew these people who had these awesome non-alc brands, right? And I tried them previously. So I called him and I said, can you get me the phone number of XYZ? And the lady's name was Carol. And he said, sure thing. So I phone up. And at this point, I only have a Yahoo email address. Yeah. Okay. The company's not set up. I have no idea. The name is Sober Binge. Yeah. Okay.
So
I'm very persuasive. So I call this lady and I introduce myself and I just say to her, like, at that point, so remember, at that point, I was going to set them up with other distributors. So there was like, yeah. And I just said to her, I want to bring your brands into the Middle East. I've got a plan. This is what I'm going to do. Come to Dubai. And she's like, who are you? Like, again, like, what is this like, a Nigerian prince calling me to say you want $2 million a bit? So yeah. And then you have a call and they come and you kind of, I've always believed in people doing business with people because that's what I do.
Of course.
I've been approached by some amazing brands previously and I meet the people, whether it's the founders or the people that work for the brand. And I'm like, I will struggle to work with you because you are creepy, you are slimy, you are dishonest, you are transactional. Like, I will not enjoy working with you. And I know by now my team will not enjoy working with you. So I pass. And I pass. I'm like, I'll help you if I can. I'll make an introduction to somebody that maybe can work with you, but I will not work with you. And so far, my gut instinct in terms of the brands that I want to work with it's been right.
Serves you well.
Yeah, it served me well. So working, I think, people, connecting with people. I'm a huge fan of opening up my home to people that I work with. you know, if we were to have dinner with our spouses, I wouldn't invite you to a swanky restaurant in the IFC. I'd say, come to my house.
Yeah.
Let's do dinner at my house, because then you come into my home, you see the pictures of my kids, you meet my husband, you see me, you know, you see who I am. And it's almost like, you know, if you're dating, like you skip those first 10 dates, like you go straight in, you're like, I like you, like I connect with you. So, and I've always believed in the power of people connection and doing business with people, you know. Every single person I've hired, I think only 2 people out of 17 that we've hired, we had to go to a recruitment agency.
Yeah.
But everybody else, you know, we needed a marketing manager. I would literally sit there and go, who is the best marketing manager in my field that I can afford currently in Dubai? That one. Well, that's who I'm going to get. And I just, you know, meet them for lunch and speak to them and understand them and let them see Persuade them. I'm very persuasive. That's it, you know, and you bring people in, like whatever vision you have, like you just share it with people. And I think people connect with you.
Everyone has an idea, right? And there's probably lots of people that have had this idea, but the reality is that you've been able to deliver on the
and
idea.
I've had so many
You've been able to execute that, okay?
And I've had so many people say this to me, like when we started Drink Dry and we kind of picked up a bit of momentum and the category picked up momentum, Heineken Zero launched, right? And everybody's like, oh, I had this idea 2 years ago. And I'm like, well, good for you.
Yeah.
Like while you had that idea, I was already doing it. Like I was already failing 3 times and then succeeding once.
Yeah. So what was the toughest part when you got going?
Everything.
Yeah. Which I understand. Was there anything that stands out?
Literally everything. Like everything, you know, from personal, as awesome and as amazing as my husband is, and boy, he really is. I think we really hit some sort of a rock bottom in 2022 because Drink Dry was consuming me. Like it was literally consuming the entire being of me, you know? So he went from, and he's my best friend. Like he's my favorite person in the world that I want to spend every living moment with. Like he's my best friend.
Yeah.
So he went from having an awesome wife, a best friend, a mother to his kids, to losing all of it. You know, I just was not present. I spent every single waking moment of my day consumed by Drink Dry, because it was, and I still, no regrets from my side, because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Yeah.
It would have failed.
Yeah.
You know, I had to, and I also had to make sure that if it failed, I can look back and say, I gave it 120% or more. Like I did everything I could. So that was really difficult. You know, I gave birth to my 3rd daughter in March 2021 as Drink Dry sort of picked up. And, you know, I literally it was a Sunday, so it was still a working day then. Yeah. And in between my contractions, I was on the phone to Choitrums because we were making our first deliveries.
So I know how hard it's been to get you to this podcast.
Yeah, so but I was literally, and my husband was so furious with me. Yeah. I stood out of bed and like I'd mute in between contractions. I'd ask a question purposely that I knew the answer to, but I needed them to talk. And I'd mute the phone because the only person I had was somebody I hired 3 weeks ago. So they had no idea. Yeah. Like it was just me. And I'd screaming between my contractions and then I'd answer and then that was it. And then so this is how I went back to the office 2 days after I gave birth to my daughter. You know, my husband took 3 weeks off. He spent time with her. I don't remember my 3rd child probably until 2 years in.
Do you regret that?
No, no. I have no regrets. And I mean that for 2 reasons. At that moment in time, I think I had 2 kids before. So I've done it. I've done all of that. I had the baby. Like so I wasn't craving that newborn motherhood. It was my 3rd child. And I don't dismiss that, but a mum who's done it more than once will know what I mean, right? And at that moment in time, Drink Dry was my focus. That was what mattered to me the most. For me, not for my kids, not for my parents, not for my husband, for me. And I had to succeed at that. And, you know, I have an amazing husband. I have a mum. Like, so we went 3 weeks or 4 weeks. My husband was kind of literally with her the whole time, her primary caregiver. Then my mum came for a month. Then my sister came for a month. Then my husband's sister came for a month. So like I put 4 months in place where she just went from like one set of hands to another, but by a family member, super loved, you know, no regrets. I mean, I have awesome relationship with my children, incredible relationship with them. And they're so proud of me. I feel like I'm teaching them all the right things. They're little feminists through and through. You know, they love men and boys, but they are tough little cookies, you know. No regrets, not at all. And I think, but it was hard at that moment in time. I think my husband found it difficult to accept, like, what's going on here. You know, and there's part of it, you trying, and we've uncovered all of that. We kind of we went really, really deep and dark, and then we came out of it again. And we sort of hit the rock bottom in the summer of 2022, where he was like, I just can't do this anymore. Like, he's like, I don't see you because I'm either at work or I'm with the kids for a small part of the day, and then I'm back in the office till 3 o'clock in the morning. Because I told you, I didn't know half the stuff. I didn't know anything. So I'd go through my day meeting these amazing people and having these amazing opportunities. And then I'd have to go home and Google the crap out of everything because I had no idea. You know how many tutorials I watched on YouTube on anything? They're like, so can you send us so you'll send us a planogram for like the shelves? I'm like, totally. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, yeah, what is a planogram in retail shelf, and how do you reason? What's your reasoning? How do you put the products? And you're going to give us them. I'll do all of that. And then you're just learning all the time how to do it. So by the time you send the planogram, they, you know, I think there was a point where people thought there's about 25 people at Drink Dry, and it was just me.
Just you.
So that was really difficult. The whole personal side of it. You know, I'm so close to my parents and my sister. But I didn't speak to them for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And that was really tough on them because I just didn't have the time or the headspace. And that was really tough. I think once we came out of that really horrible, dark place where I think we kind of just lost touch, you know, and he was still very supportive, but I didn't see his side of the story. That was the problem.
Well, from what you've explained to me before as well, your whole dynamic changed. I mean, everything could be changed.
Exactly.
You know, and I think you sounded like before you had sort of quite a traditional structure.
Yeah.
You don't mind me saying.
Oh yeah. 5 o'clock, I'd be home with makeup on, a pretty little dress, greeting him with a dinner, ready for the evening.
There you go. And it just completely turned on his head.
And there was no pre-warning for him.
Yeah.
It was, you know, I was going to do this tiny little business, and none of us saw it coming, but I was in it. So it was easier for me. And I made this decision, I'm going to do this. And he was kind of left with, what's going on? So we had some therapy. We went through all of that.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we put in place from, you know, and then it became clear to us, like my husband, and I was getting really angry at him. It's like, how dare you? I spent 5 years giving everything to support you, and you're not supporting me. But the challenge was that he couldn't support me because by that point, he built this multi-million-dollar company and had hundreds of, he couldn't support me. He was this big-ass CEO. Like, how could he support me? He couldn't be at home, you know? So we then decided, thank goodness, that, you know, in order... And I was getting really angry at him. And there was this one story that I was going to tell you. So I think it was around 2022, right? And at this point, I've hired people. I've sold 30% of my company to a private family office. So I've taken somebody else's money, right? The pressure is up here. No idea what I'm doing. I've got these 3 kids. Like, I just feel like I'm drowning, right? And everything is still on my shoulders, like the household, the food, the running tap or not running tap. Like, I'm the one supposed to get plumber, and like I'm just drowning, and like I just feel like I can't breathe. And it was probably like, you know, early hours. I come downstairs, probably haven't slept all night, feeding my baby. One nanny's giving me a to-do list of 17 different things that I need to order. Somebody else is telling me the toilet isn't working. The kids are screaming. I haven't had my coffee. And my husband is dressed in a fancy suit. Off he goes to work. And he kind of goes, bye, darling. He's like, oh, could you just book me a haircut appointment today? At like 4:30. And I swear to God, like it went black in my head. And I was told that there were things flying, like plates or cups or, you know, and that was the moment where I think we both went, we need some help.
Right.
We need some serious help here, you know.
Did he get a haircut from the plate, you know?
I didn't book him a haircut. That's the thing, you know. And that was it. And then slowly we then, you know, we have 2 nannies. We have a driver. We have a PA that we poached from an energy company who was a PA to 6 C-level execs. So she's sharp, like, you know, and she manages our life like a company, from kids' school to diaries to travel to, you know, she runs us and it suits us. But I wasn't able to, I couldn't ask him to be helping me, and I couldn't do everything. I couldn't do everything. So we handed over the things that kind of weren't important to us, or the things that somebody else could do, to somebody else, and things just changed. So that was difficult. We found a way out of it. I think the whole business thing is difficult. I had no, you know, hiring people is
very hard. And I suppose that's why we're in business.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, reflection, hindsight, didn't think any of it while I was in it. Hiring people is difficult, right? And everybody tells you hiring people is difficult. So I feel like hiring people is difficult. And you meet recruiters and you go, oh, I just, not me. I can't look at CVs and I can't do that. So that's why every single person I hired, I wanted them. And I knew exactly the person I wanted, personality, work, you know, I knew exactly. So I would persuade them to come to me. So I hired people in a very different way. You know, the investment, I invested a lot of money in the early days. You know, we're looking a couple of million dirhams from our own pocket before I got the investment in. But even the way, you know, I think even the way I got my investment wasn't the normal way. Because I didn't feel like, why would I be spending all my time fundraising? Who's going to be doing this? It, you know, that didn't seem right to me.
Did they approach you though?
They did.
Okay, fantastic.
They did. They approached me, and I had no idea why they approached me. I kind of suspected a little bit. And the guy who's now a chairman invited me for lunch, and we sit down, and he's sitting with his big cheese CEO and CFO and COO, whatever these people are. And there's little old me. And this is in 2021. So this is properly early. Yeah. And, you know, I love him. And we sit down, never met him, but knew of him, you know, tough cookie, self-made entrepreneur, done really well. And at that point, we were probably we ended that year on 2 million dirham turnover. Yeah. So there's no business really. We were just me and 2 other people, right? And he invited me for lunch, and I sat down, and everybody introduced, and he said, so you probably know why I invited you here. And, you know, he said, I missed the bottled water trend in my life. I didn't get on board with that, and I'm kicking myself. And there was another thing that he said, and I missed that. And he said, I'm not missing the non-alc. I don't want to miss this, right? And he said, you've got an hour to tell me why I should invest in Drink Dry, or why I should invest in you. And I think I was so...
Were you prepped for this?
No. No. So I sat there, and I don't know where it came from. And I just kind of, you know, and he's sitting like this. He's doing the whole male macho thing. So I sat like this too. And I said to him, and we laugh about this now, but I said to him, thank you so much. You know, really appreciate this. I said, I didn't approach you. You've approached me, and you invited me to lunch. So I said, why don't we order? And you have an hour to tell me why I should allow you to invest in my company. And luckily it went down well. He thought that was hilarious, you know? So then the dynamic changed a little bit, and
where did that come from?
No idea. No, I mean, no idea. Half of the stuff I sometimes say, and I get in the car and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, and I'd say 99% of the time it goes well. You know, I'm not a horrible, arrogant person. What I say it comes from a good place. I think people can feel it, you know. I wasn't sitting there like a cocky tech founder who raised 500 million and lost 500 million. It came from a good place, you know. And that was it. And then we had a meeting. It was brilliant. And then I kind of thanked him for the lunch and didn't do anything. He actually had sent me an email his PA sent me an email 4 months back that I missed, genuinely missed, like just missed it. And then he got somebody from his team to wine and dine somebody that worked for me. And at the end, they said, can you please ask Erika to meet with our chairman? And then the guy called me. He's like, why are you not meeting with him? I was like, I don't know. Like, nobody asked me to. So then
You thought you were playing a game.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So then his PA resends the email in October that she sent in July. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I just missed it. There's no other excuse for it. So I think like it kind of all played in my favor that he thought I was playing hard to get. I was a bit cocky or whatever, confident. And then, I felt genuinely it was too early to give something that I didn't want to take somebody else's money. I felt it was too risky. It was too early. I felt I could do a bit more by myself. So I rejected it. Like came before Christmas. He sent his, I said, no, thank you, basically. And then he said, send somebody like his CEO to my house. The guy came and he said, I'm here on my own kind of accord. He's like, you're making a mistake. He's like, you need to really think about this. So then I went away for Christmas and I came back and I called our chairman now and I said, can you and I meet? Like you and me, no entourage. I'm not going to bring some pretend CFO. I'm not going to bring my husband as my lead investor, just you and me. And we did. We met in the IFC office and I think we spent 4 hours together. I cried because he asked some really personal questions, but we connected. Like it was like, I really understood why he wanted to invest in Drink Dry. And he, I think, understood it wasn't just a business for me. Like by that point, I had missed, raising my kid. I had done a lot of sacrifices even at that point. So I think we just, again, like human connection where it's much bigger and deeper than valuation or business and we just connected and we clicked. And then within 2 months, he gave me a very generous valuation of the business and I agreed to sell 30% of it and we never looked back. And, we've had a challenging times in between. Yeah. And then we had an excellent time last year where we just smashed through the targets. We onboarded the best world brands. Drink Dry is probably the leading player in non-alc distribution globally.
Globally?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Globally. Wow. In non-alc distribution, for sure. And we've done it well. We've done it, we've not raised money from VCs and crashed it and like we've not screwed anybody over. We pay all our suppliers a day early, not just on time. Our policy is to pay them a day early. So we do the right things always, and we don't always hit the targets maybe, but we do the right thing all the time. And eventually it just all comes together. So, even that was kind of a different way round. It wasn't I didn't have an investment deck. I mean, I didn't have anything.
Sure.
Nothing.
Wow. Great story. So for someone listening or watching to this and why should you sell 30% of your company? I think a lot of people would be intrigued. What made you do that at such an early stage? What was the added benefit to you, apart from the monetary side? But what did you see as the added value there?
So I think because my husband did similar thing when his company was about 10 years old. He sold 51% of his company for £1, but got the money to build it, and he did a phenomenal job. So I had that as an example of, it's not about what the percentage you own, but it's the value in what you have, right? And there's a saying, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together, right? And I genuinely live by that, whether it's in marriage, friendship, business. So I think partly I already had a good example in my circle that it's not a scary thing. And I've heard some horror stories, right, from other founders. But in my experience, it was a good thing as long as it's the right person coming on board. And I knew that I couldn't do it on my own. I needed really strong support. As a founder, you're a jack of all trades for a certain period of time. And I could do a lot on my own to a pretty basic standard, right? But then there comes a point where you have to start hiring people who are experts in that field, right? I understand marketing and I can do the bare minimum in it, But when I'm hiring somebody, I want them to be so much better than, my gosh, me, but other people. And you need other people. I needed a CFO. I needed somebody who's got 60 years of experience, having gone bankrupt twice and come back up to life. And I needed those people around me, the connections they have, the funding that they can bring. So, that's what allowed me to scale much, much faster. I mean, if it wasn't for that, I could be sitting here, maybe hired 3 people and just gone back to being in e-commerce, because we would have never been able to onboard Guinness, Corona Zero, like all of these global brands that work with MMI and A&E. We have their Non-Alc. Wow. So I would have never been able to do it on my own without the good people. And you need money for it. You need good advice. I don't believe I have a big ego. And I think that's really served me well. So I do like going into my board meeting and hearing things that are a bit uncomfortable, and then walking away from that and thinking, that's not true, or maybe that's a bit true, and I need to work on that. And, take advice from people and work collaboratively. I would have not been able to get to where I am today without that investment. Not to say that it works for everyone, but it just depends, and some people are happy to have a business that provides them a livelihood, right? That they draw salary out of it, and that's it. So then there's no need to sell. You continue as you are. You continue bootstrapping. As long as it's self-sustaining, you hire a few people, you can grow it, and that's fine. I didn't want that. I don't do things by half. Like, if I start running, I just go, I think I'm going to start running on Sundays a bit. I'll be running a marathon in 6 months. Yeah. If I'm going to have kids, I'm going to have 3. Yeah. Like, if I'm going to marry, I'm going to really marry. Like, I don't do things by half. Like, it's not in my nature. I either don't do it, but once I say I'm going to do something. So the same with Drink Dry. Once I started it, it wasn't going to be a cottage industry business. It wasn't going to be some stay-at-home mom was bored and started something. I wanted to become if not a global, then an absolute player in the drinks industry here in the UAE and wider GCC. And that takes other resources than just me.
Of course. So a couple of questions I've got, because we're getting near the end. First of all, how has your life changed since you took investment, like the role that you got in the business? How different is that from the early days now?
I mean, that was good because it was a really good deal. So it was cash in, cash out. So I managed to take I sold the shares. So I got the money back that I invested and I gave it back to my husband. And that was good. Kind of, there was no longer personal, emotional tie to it. And that was, and that really helped our relationship, I think, go better. 2023 was a bit challenging because we took the money and we set up these really high plans and we didn't quite hit the mark. Yet we hired the people. So we lost more than we anticipated, and we didn't quite hit the top line. So that was difficult. It was difficult not to feel like it was a failure, right? But that's when good partners come into play, right? They will tell you the truth. They're like, you didn't do as good as you should have done, but you get up and you go again. So, that was difficult, but it was a game changer. It was an absolute game changer. I don't think if it was without that investment, I wouldn't have been able to continue funding the business myself. Just, I didn't have that much capital available.
Very capital intensive business.
It is, because you buy the product, you buy, you sell, and then there's long payment terms from the retailers. And I mean, it's really capital intensive business. And particularly when you are doubling your business year on year, every year. So it's even when you turn profitable, it's the working capital requirement that you need to continue furthering it. So it was a game changer. Like, personally, we were able to grow where we are today. And when just this month, at the start of the year, I handed over. We promoted my commercial director, who's been with us for the last 4 years, to managing director, and I stepped back from the day-to-day of the running of the business. I mean,
what a pleasure.
I know. Yeah. What a privilege. What an absolute privilege. And last week we did a big team kickoff meeting for the year to share our plans and the vision and the budget. So very transparently, like, this is what we're doing this year. And I was sitting back, I think I spoke twice.
Wow.
And I'm looking around, I'm like, you're excellent, you're epic, you're amazing. You're all so much better at your jobs than I could ever be in that role. And I get to sit back, focus on some other things, and it just works. What an absolute privilege. And I don't think I would have been able to get to that point so quickly in my journey had I not taken the funding.
Okay. And what's your vision then? What's the, obviously you've got an investor, so I guess you have to have a vision of where you want to take this now.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing that?
No, and I think, look, so my vision is that non-alc is synonymous with drink dry here in the UAE.
Mm.
So, like when you say, pass me a Kleenex, you mean a tissue, but you say a Kleenex. I want people to, when they think non-alc, that they think drink dry, or when they think drink dry, they think non-alc. We want to be so synonymous with that. So our goal is to be everywhere where the consumer is and where they're looking for non-alc. So if you're not a digitally native consumer and you shop online, we are there. And we offer you speedy, excellent, efficient, great experience for our own e-commerce. If you are Jumeirah Jane and you love a Tuesday trip to Spinneys, we are in all the Spinneys and Waitrose supermarkets, beautifully displayed for you. If you dine in unlicensed vegetarian cafe in Jumeirah Road, our products are there. If you are constantly going to DIFC locations, our products are there. We want to make sure that non-alc is available absolutely everywhere in such brilliant way that it's an enjoyable experience for the consumer. Because I genuinely believe what COVID has taught us, the way we are looking at our health and well-being and longevity, people are really taking time and they're looking at what they're putting into their bodies. And given a choice between a really nice alcoholic cocktail and a really nice non-alcoholic cocktail, people think twice now.
Yeah.
And they think, actually, it's Tuesday and I've got to be up early tomorrow. I'll go with that. Thanks a lot. And they try it and they're like, this is brilliant. I'll have another one. And then they feel like they had a really great time and it's not a compromise in any way. This is kind of my goal. And I want Drink Dry to grow to a point where everybody knows who we are. It might not be maybe that somebody brings in a brand that we're not associated with, but we will sell them on e-commerce and people will still think of that brand and they'll think of Drink Dry.
Wow. And I was reading something that, boomers, Gen X, millennials consumed a significant amount of alcohol, but the generation Gen Z, they're changing the game, right?
Totally.
I don't know what $13 billion I've got in my head versus like 40 billion or something.
Yeah.
Am I right in that? You'll know the stats.
So in 2019, the non-alc as a category, and I'm talking non-alc like substitutes for, I'm not talking soft drinks or water, I'm talking like premium non-alcoholic drinks. In 2019, it was worth just under 10 billion.
Yeah.
Now we're pushing close to 20.
Wow.
In no time at all.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's exponential growth. Look,
it's heading down where smoking is, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
And I think at the moment where we look in the UAE, it's 35 to 45 currently that are our biggest consumers.
Yeah.
And then you've got, the 45 to 55 and onwards. I believe what's happening right now, this is nothing. Like we've not seen the seismic shift. We've not seen anything at all. Once the next two generations that are coming up, that's when the whole ball game, like it will change dramatically and everybody knows it. I'm not preaching. People can do exactly what they want to do, but it will come. It's like with smoking. There will come a point where it will not be socially acceptable. Everybody will look strangely at you. And, why would you do that? Alcoholic companies know that. There'll always be a room and a time and a place for enjoying alcohol in a social occasion. But I think there has to be a shift in terms of how we enjoy that. And non-alcoholic drinks are getting better and better. The quality is getting better. The application, the execution of the cocktails is getting better. It's just the beginning. This is nothing. Yeah,
I agree. Erika, what a story. Thank you so much for sharing.
You've asked all the right questions.
No,
thank you.
I loved it. Thank you very much. Guys, if you enjoyed the show, please smash on the subscribe button and I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks a lot.